Fox News alert. Biden's Justice Department has just brought criminal charges against Donald Trump, his political opponent, for the third time in 4 months. This time, the charges relate to January 6th.
In detail.
That was special counsel Jack Smith, who looked like a bedraggled, nervous wreck, dripping with anger and highly emotional. The last time Jack Smith charged a politician, the case was so weak it got tossed out of the Supreme Court unanimously. Biden's Justice Department is using obscure federal statutes to put a former president in prison for the rest of his life. These charges aren't bribery, not assault, not tax evasion, not sex trafficking. They're charging Trump under the Act of 1866. It was used against the Klan, and now they're using it against Trump. I know this doesn't count in a court of law, but do you think Trump had any idea that he was breaking the law when he was asking Mike Pence not to certify? And how are you going to prove that Trump knew there wasn't any election fraud? And how are you going to prove that these were corrupt intentions if Trump thought he was doing the righteous thing? You can't. It was just politics. It's all politics. He was pushing it as far as he could, and maybe he pushed it a little too far. But should he die in prison for that? I don't think the Biden administration realizes what it's done here. It's going to give Donald Trump the opportunity to relitigate the 2020 election in federal court. This is what Donald Trump's been dying to do for the last 2.5 years. He's going to have subpoena power. He's going to cross-examine witnesses. He's going to put on his own witnesses. He's going to go out and prove or try to prove there was election fraud in Philly, Vegas, Arizona, Detroit. And the federal government is going to have to prove that it was clean in those deep blue counties. That's going to be a fun one to follow. Charges.
Jesse, thanks for having me on. These charges are politically motivated, like no charges we have ever seen before in this country. This indictment reads like it was written by Adam Schiff himself or by the January 6th committee itself. It's a rehashing of a bunch of First Amendment protected activity, describing things that the president said and did, and drawing conclusions and pushing forward with legal claims against legal counts against Donald Trump, saying that he violated a criminal law because he questioned the outcome of an election, because he questioned different things that a lot of Americans also had questions about. One of the counts he's facing is a conspiracy charge under the statute that was used to prosecute members of the KKK after the Civil War. I mean, they are really stretching. They are really stretching to find crimes to meet what they want to do. They want to rehash all these old things from that the left has always wanted to do. They want to bring Donald Trump. They want to drag him into jail. And they're going to go anywhere they can, do anything they can do to do so.
So if they're saying that the certification was delayed a couple hours because of the January 6th protesters, they're saying that's conspiracy to obstruct an official proceeding. You're delaying an action in the Senate and the House for a couple hours. That's a 5-year prison sentence for delaying a proceeding? I mean, anytime Code Pink goes into a hearing and holds up crazy signs and blows whistles and slows things down, that's a 5-year prison sentence?
Right. I mean, it's the results are absurd. And of course, the other thing is that you still have to show the existence of an actual conspiracy between Donald Trump and other folks who acted in furtherance of that. And I don't think that the government's going to be able to prove that, regardless of all of the word vomit that they put on their indictment. It's not going to be possible. They're not going to be able to carry their burden. If they succeed in getting a conviction in the district court, there is a 0% chance that this thing stands on appeal, particularly at the Supreme Court.
It's another sad moment in our country's history. The 45th president of the United States, Donald Trump, has yet again been indicted by the Biden DOJ, a political party in power that is now repeatedly using police force to indict and arrest and potentially eliminate its political opponents from competition. This is a politicized prosecution. It is a political persecution through prosecution, now in a third indictment just in a matter of months against the person who is still at present the lead contender in the Republican primary for U.S. president. I want to be very clear. I am running for U.S. president in that same Republican primary. It would be easier for me if Donald Trump were eliminated from competition. That's not how I want to win. This is not about politics to me. This is about first principles. We do not want to become a country where the party in power is able to use banana republic-like tactics to eliminate its political opponents. Yet I'm sad to say that's exactly where we are. The allegations in this indictment fall flat. It is wrong and incorrect and inaccurate to place blame for what happened on January 6th at the feet of Donald Trump. He specifically told the protesters that day to behave peacefully.
If you don't fight like hell, you're not going to have a country anymore.
The First Amendment in this country gives political protesters the ability to express themselves and their opinions freely. Donald Trump was not responsible for what happened on January 6th. You want to know what was responsible? I said this in the days after January 6, 2021, just as I say it today. Systematic, pervasive censorship in this country. That was after a year where we had told people across this nation that you had to stay locked down in your house, in your basement, and shut up, sit down, do as you're told. If you question that, you're racist, you're anti-science, your social media accounts were silenced. You had to stay home and lock down unless you were part of BLM or Antifa, in which case it was perfectly fine to roam the streets of this country and burn many of them down.
What's up, guys? It's your boy Benny reporting to you from the country once known as America, and now I don't know what kind of communist hole we live in. It's a day that ends in Y, so Donald Trump must be indicted again. And now Donald Trump is indicted officially, what we all assumed was going to happen in Washington, D.C., the cesspool, the festering swamp, the boil that needs to be lanced in America. They went to a D.C. jury. Remember, D.C. voted for Joe Biden 98% for Joe Biden. They went to a D.C. jury and they wrote this seething, hyperventilating, postmenopausal fan fiction not fit for the New York Times editorial pages. It reads like a freshman liberal arts student at Brown writing, seething about how much they hate Donald Trump. This is an unbelievable, fraudulent filing here. I mean, it is so thin, it is so despicable, and it is so destructive to our First Amendment. So they finally charged Trump. All right, what they charge him with, I'll stop for a second and actually read you the news, but then I got a lot to get to here.
All right, guys, so we got to talk about the bombshell news that you may or may not have heard about by now, which is Trump has been indicted again, okay, for a third time, this time having to do with January 6th, okay? I mean, you have the federal government essentially punishing the former president for his freedom of speech and daring to challenge the outcome of the election, which in the indictment, if you read the indictment, I read the indictment, they acknowledge that he has the right to do, right? He has the right to do that, to take the actions that he took to challenge the election. But anyways, yeah, they're punishing him for his freedom of speech and for challenging the election. But we all knew that this was coming, okay, because the DOJ is politically charged and they're trying to keep President Donald J. Trump from retaking the office, okay? They're trying their best. They're trying their best to interfere in the election. And quite honestly, in my opinion, I think that this is just going to be another boost for Trump in the polls, and at very least in the Republican primary, and who knows, maybe even in the general election. And I want to talk about that because, in my opinion, honestly, if I'm Trump, I'm welcoming this stuff, okay? Because it seems like the more they throw at the man, the stronger he gets. So let's go ahead and get into it. We're going to play a video here of Jack Smith, the special counsel, who's in charge of this investigation, explaining these charges and making the announcement against Trump. Take a look. And also on top of that, you know, I don't think it's a crime to challenge the outcome of the election. If it was, then all Democrats should be arrested and prosecuted as well, too, because, you know, every single time a Republican wins a presidential election, Democrats challenge the election, including making unsubstantiated claims about voting machines and all types of other stuff, fraud and all types of other stuff, they definitely probably didn't believe, but they made the claims anyways because they were salty that Trump won or they were salty that Bush won or whatever. That again, up until 2020 was totally fair game, right? It's just fascinating how that works. But again, I'm not a lawyer, right? So, take what I'm saying with a grain of salt, but that to me sounds like, what they would have to prove in order to get Trump on at least some of the charges. I think that the January 6th stuff is bunk. I think clearly we all know that Trump told the protesters to protest peacefully.
If you don't fight like hell, you're not going to have a country anymore.
Right, and that he, was not actually really trying to, overthrow the government, right? So again, I mean, there's a lot more detail. Again, I'm not a lawyer, so that's not the point of this video. The point of this video is to basically demonstrate how this is probably going to backfire on the deep state and the Democrats who are persecuting Trump for political purposes. We all know that. And it just so happens that, again, coincidentally, every single time there is a spotlight on Biden and the Biden crime family or some scandal involving Joe Biden, one of these indictments comes out against Trump to distract the public from the fact that the Biden crime family should actually be impeached and removed from office. Take a look.
So finally, the other shoe dropped. Yesterday, Jack Smith, the special counsel who was appointed to investigate Donald Trump's activities surrounding the election of 2020 and January 6th, and also appointed to look into his handling of classified documents, he has now filed a second case against Donald Trump. The classified documents case is going to be held down in Florida. Now he has filed a federal indictment alleging multiple crimes with regard to January 6th and election 2020. According to the Wall Street Journal, Trump was indicted Tuesday in an unprecedented criminal case accusing the former president of trying to subvert the will of American voters through his attempts to cling to power after he lost the 2020 election. Here was Jack Smith yesterday announcing the indictment and making it all about January 6th. And as we'll see, this is sort of fascinating because it's political. I mean, when I say it's political, I don't just mean that he is saying things that are political in nature. I mean that this indictment itself is political. See, in order for an indictment to actually have any teeth, the crimes that are statutory in nature, the elements of the crimes must be fulfilled. Alleging that somebody did a bad thing to you doesn't make it a crime. If I say something mean to you, you may not like it. I may be being a jerk. But that doesn't mean that I just committed a crime. A crime is a statutorily defined thing, and you have to hit the elements of that crime in order for you to go to jail over that crime. The problem in this particular case is that there are a lot of things that a lot of people don't like about what Donald Trump did between the election of 2020 and January 6th. I think, for example, he was not telling the truth when he suggested that the election had actually been won by him, that formal voter fraud, not just, media rigging the election through informal means or changing of voter rules, but actual formal voter fraud changed the outcome of the 2020 election. I think he knew that was not true, and I think that he was lying about that, but I can't prove it. Not only can I not prove it, the evidence, again, is somewhat speculative because maybe he truly believed, this is going to be his defense, that voter fraud did decide the 2020 election. I think that Donald Trump did something that was frankly false. And I think that he was lying to people when he suggested between the election and January 6th that Mike Pence had the unilateral ability to overturn election results. That's not the way the Constitution is written. However, could there be a legal theory to that extent that Donald Trump actually believed? Sure, there could be. Me thinking that Donald Trump did a bad thing does not make the bad thing a crime. And when you start making bad things a crime, things you don't like a crime, free speech a crime, specious legal theories a crime, now you're encroaching on actual American freedoms just to get Donald Trump. And that's what Jack Smith is doing here. Because as we will see, and we're going to go through the indictment in great detail today, as we will see, the things that Jack Smith is alleging are mainly things that are just not good things that are not provable crimes. And he is stretching the definition of crimes to fit those not good things because he had a mandate, as all special counsels do, which is indict. And as the old saying goes, once you get a case in front of a grand jury, they'll indict a ham sandwich. And for Jack Smith, who's bringing this case in Washington, D.C., it's almost being treated, I think, legally as a backup to the classified documents case in Florida. The classified documents case in Florida is the most significant legal threat to Donald Trump because he appears to have fulfilled the elements of the crime. Leave aside the double standard with Hillary Clinton. If you are just a jury looking at whether Donald Trump did the things alleged in the indictment and do those fulfill the elements of the crime with regard to classified documents, the answer is likely yes in the state of Florida. The problem for Jack Smith is it's in the state of Florida. You may get a juror who's willing to basically say, I don't think it's fair that you're trying him at all, and so I'm going to vote to acquit. So the backup is file a bunch of real stretch charges in Washington, D.C., where everybody hates Donald Trump's guts and hope that they're going to send him to jail on those bases. Same thing that Manhattan DA is doing over in Manhattan with regard to these ridiculous Stormy Daniels charges. He's figuring it's a Manhattan jury. They hate Donald Trump. They'll put him in jail. And this is where it starts to seem incredibly political. Again, not just political because everything is political, but political in the sense that there is an overt attempt at this point to stretch the law to get Donald Trump. Here's Jack Smith yesterday announcing the charges. I mean, it is, in fact, incredible. And the DOJ being weaponized against the chief political opponent of the current president of the United States, while that same DOJ was trying to cut a backdoor sweetheart deal with the president's son, is a wild spectacle. And it is going to be the centerpiece of the 2024 election if Donald Trump ends up being the nominee. And we'll get to sort of the effects of this on both the primary and the general election in a little bit. But the fact remains that this indictment is really specious. It's really, really specious. Jack Smith's entire indicting strategy here is January 6th is super bad. Here's a bunch of crap I'm going to throw against the wall. That is not an indictment strategy. And here's the thing, Jack Smith knows better. So up until this point, I've said, with regard to Jack Smith is a special prosecutor. It's his job to identify crimes and charge them. If he sees overwhelming evidence of a crime happening, it's not his job to undo what James Comey did wrongly in allowing Hillary Clinton off the hook in 2016 over classified documents. It's his job to determine whether the elements of a crime are fulfilled and then to charge them. So when it comes to, for example, the classified documents case in Florida, I can't blame Jack Smith for the indictment. That's literally his job. But this is not his job. This is now political. And this is pretty obviously coming from a Biden DOJ that, again, is politically biased. It is impossible to read this current Trump indictment without at the same time reading the fact that the DOJ did not set up a special counsel for the Hunter Biden prosecution, that the DOJ appears to have attempted a sweetheart deal with Hunter, that the DOJ pretty obviously is attempting to avoid any further investigation into Hunter Biden's finances, specifically with regard to his own dad. When you read those two in juxtaposition to one another, it looks like the current president of the United States is prosecuting the former president of the United States. That's what it looks like. That's what it smells like. And by the way,
this indictment is already backfiring. They are blaming Trump for everything that they have actually done. And this indictment is nothing more than a cover-up of the Biden crimes. Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to ANN American News Network. I'm your host, Vlad. Two things. I want to thank the sponsor of this channel, Mike Lindell, with his company's My Store and My Pillow. Usually you're here for the news. You're here because we know that the legacy media lies. They brainwash. They propagandize the nation and the nations. And so we, freedom-loving Americans and patriots, the Maga crowd, we're going to try to speak the truth to the best of our ability. Trump's been indicted over the J6 sham. But now they're indicting Trump for freedom of speech. Now they're indicting Trump because he questioned an election. So Hillary Clinton's able to do it, but Trump was not. Another thing, when is Hillary going to be indicted? Because the Durham report says, see, Durham, thank you for your report, but you're a coward. You're a special prosecutor. You had the same and have the same authority as Jack Smith to indict anybody you want, even former presidents, senators, congressmen and women, anyone in the FBI, DOJ, the State Department, but he didn't because he cowered. He buckled under pressure, and you know what? Good. We don't need anyone that's a weakling with us. But when Trump said, I'm going to drain the swamp fights back. This is what we're seeing. We're seeing the swamp fight back. The swamp is literally fighting for their existence. The swamp is fighting for its life. The swamp is fighting for its lifestyle that it got so used to and no one ever questioned it. But here comes Trump. He gets the most powerful political movement going in the history of United States politics, maybe even the world. And the swamp creatures are freaking out. The swamp creatures are fighting back.
What a stupid son of a bitch.